Support comes from Marina Cafe in Wilmington Shores, California. It's Shifted Perspective on Sociology of Cars podcast. I'm your host, Shift. In this new season, my goal is to bring you other professionals that also live and breathe the automotive racing industry. Through real conversations, we'll highlight diverse career paths, insider knowledge, and the mindset required to succeed. In this new episode, I have Nate joining us from Rice and Beans. Nate, welcome.
How's it going, man? Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I'm glad that you're part of this. We're getting technical, and we're going to start picking off topics one at a time.
Nice.
With your engineering background and my driving experience, we're going to mash it together. Today's topic is spring rates and dampers.
Sounds like fun.
All right.
An episode for the nerds.
For the nerds.
Or if not, we'll turn you into one.
Yes, right. It's going to be contagious. And I just want to start and set the premises that, you know, from a driver, and I'm sure, Nate, you share the same feelings because we talk about this all the time. We are not encouraging you to go out and modify the heck out of your car.
No.
This is not the goal.
Yeah.
It's we're wanting to educate you, but also we're going to try to help expand your mind and possibly think of why engineering, R&D takes so long when you're developing a car.
Right.
But then where the aftermarket still has space to thrive.
Yes.
Now, we'll just keep it simple. We'll start off, Nate.
Yeah.
Where did you begin or catch that thought to where, this is why I would even consider spring rates, or even dampers?
Yeah. You know, early on, before when I was new to kind of modding into cars and I started getting into like tracking and all that, I fell into like that usual trap that most people do. Like I have to mod the suspension, you know, like stock sucks, got to mod it.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't really give myself a chance to explore the limits of kind of the stock suspension setup. In my case, like in Corvettes, late model Corvettes, or I didn't give myself, now that I look back, an opportunity as a driver, right, to kind of work on my skills with a stock suspension car. But it wasn't until I started really tracking the car, because I did that before I did drive canyons, that I started to see the need to maybe, mod the car suspension-wise and all that. Started off with looking for better struts, right, or springs. Sway bars, stuff like that, you know, tires. So tracking the car and eventually hitting the canyons is where I started to explore the limits of cars and start playing with suspension settings, you know, stuff like that.
Nice. For me, I guess I started a little early. I've always been a nerd for cars, but where I got to really think about that for the first time, I was a kid, and it was with Gran Turismo. Funny story is that Gran Turismo, back then, you could actually see the specific kilogram or pounds that you want to set your spring rate to.
Yeah.
And then bound and rebit. I'm sure you've seen that before.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, let me just take this car, spend all the money on it. Let me just max everything out. Super stiff, high spring rate, max sway bar setting. Yeah. And I'm approaching a turn, 60, turn left, and I go straight. And I'm like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't understand that there was no suspension travel. There was no compression. There's no room for it to articulate and transfer the weight. So it was just so stiff. I went straight, and I'm like, okay, maybe this high number, max everything, isn't good. That's where my thought began, is to, let's start tweaking this. Maybe this is too soft. What happens when you offset the front to the rear? Yeah. Add more rate, less damper, and this and that, vice versa. So for me, I in a theoretical space, I started to play with this stuff. And it wasn't until I started to drive where I started to really put the two together. Yeah. And then eventually engineering space, I started to see how they started to do that with production cars and prototypes. So
you know what's funny is I'm a big Gran Turismo fan.
Oh, nice.
And so like right now I still have like Gran Turismo 7.
Oh, sweet.
And there is some adjustments, but now like I know like my sway bar settings are usually like a little softer because I want more grip. And it's funny now that I understand how things work. Like I make the adjustments. And my kid's like, Dad, what do all those numbers mean? I'm like, don't worry about it. But, you know, I'm old enough to where I was driving the first couple Gran Turismo games, you know, and I had no clue what any of those numbers meant. You know, I'm like this teenage guy. I'm like, I don't know what it was. I was more influenced by all the car magazines I was reading, all the modded stuff. So all I knew is like, mod a car to make it faster. Yeah. And like, that's it. There was never any talk about like a driver.
Right.
You know, like driver input or nothing. It's just like, well, if this professional's like advertising for this suspension company, then that's what I need to go get, you know? So Gran Turismo, I didn't mess with it too much because like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
There's so much to change.
Dude, like back then you can change like all the gearing settings.
Yes.
And I would mess with them and like the car would be slow as balls or like, you know, like it would like top out at 120. I'm like, okay, what did I do? Go back to default. But yeah, I know how that was.
On that note, you know, cause I had no benchmark, right?
Yeah.
Other than whatever standard was. So what I ended up doing was, for me, I started watching best motoring videos, and Keiichi Tsuchiya is my driving hero.
Yeah.
So he had his own product line. So I just took like basic Corolla, and I'm like, why is he putting, what is 8K in the front, spring rate, 6K in the rear? And I'm like, let's just put those numbers in, plug it in, and see how it drives.
Yeah.
And I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, holy crap, this car transformed.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started to tweak. Well, what happens when you take away from that in the front and add more in the rear, or increase the offset even more? Let's more rate in the rear, less in the rear. And then, you know, then that's where I started to explore all those nuances. Yeah. But that, for me, that's when, you know, then I got into the magazines. Then I started to see what other aftermarket companies are doing. And then I started to see, okay, I can see where R&D and then engineering is important versus the Temu or Alibaba copy paste, like ship that out, like copy of a suspension. So it's interesting. Then I really started to appreciate that when I started driving.
Yeah. So like with me, like you were asking me earlier, my first C5, I kind of didn't really give myself a chance with it to drive it kind of stock that much. You know, I was younger, in my early 20s. And I was just kind of starting my engineer career. That was how like I treated myself. I'm like, oh, I finally have a decent paycheck, you know. So I ran out and bought a C5 Corvette, you know. But back then it's like I need to start modding it right away because that's the cool thing to do. Yeah. But fast forward to when I got into the C6, I had started to talk to more drivers, you know, more experienced drivers. And I started to see how fast they were. And many times I was surprised that they didn't have a ton of crazy mods. You know, they had a ton of seat time, you know, which made them really familiar with the car. And so I started to have more of appreciation for the stock setup. And also as I was doing like, it's not related to suspension, but as I was wrenching more on cars, like engine stuff and powertrain, I was learning like, you know what, there's some stock stuff that's doesn't need to be upgraded. It does its job just fine. And just because an aftermarket company makes an aftermarket part doesn't mean it's necessarily that much of an upgrade. Right. And I started seeing that also applies to suspension. You know, like aftermarket's going to make anything because they know people will buy it. Doesn't mean you need it. And so with my C6, my approach was like, let me just see how it does out the box. And for a while, the only upgrade was just better tires. And that made me learn the car much, much better. The car's dynamics, how the car behaves. And then I'm like, okay, now I know what can be improved. And let's touch those areas as we go. Right. And so even though I've had the car now for like 9 years or whatever, like the coilovers, I've only been on it like less than 2. Right. So I spent those first years actually doing stock upgrades, you know, like getting parts from a Z06 or other cars. And maybe we'll get into it in a little bit, but learning the differences, like, okay, why does the Z06 have separate shocks? Why are they stiffer? Or why does it have different spring rates versus a base car, right? And then so now you learn, okay, well, tire width plays a role, weight plays a role, you know, and you start kind of getting an idea for all of these things. So I got to learn a lot with my C6 of going from stock and just upgrading it slowly into where it is now.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. And we'll definitely dive deeper.
Yeah.
So let's just, we'll start off with the basics, you know, a spring and a strut or a shock.
Yeah.
Now, for everyone that isn't familiar, hasn't looked under the hood, you know, your coil spring is there usually mated to your shock or your strut.
Yeah.
And the main reason for the spring is to compress but absorb the bumps over the road. And then your shock is meant to reset it back to where static height is. So it compresses and rebounds back to where it was. But the sole purpose of the spring is just to absorb the bump, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll get into like the different types of springs.
Yeah. Well, just really quick.
Yeah.
The way I like to illustrate it is so picture, it's almost like if you look at a big mattress or something, right? But so the springs hold up the weight of the car.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't want a super stiff car, and we'll get into that later, but the springs hold up the weight of the vehicle. Right. The shocks or struts control the speed of how fast those springs work, getting compressed and rebounding back up. So the spring their only job is to hold the weight up, and it tries to hold the car level, right?
Right.
So as your wheels are moving up and down, it wants to keep the car level, and that's what your springs do. And then the shocks kind of control how fast or slow it does that. I don't know.
That's a good that's a good analogy with the
I don't
mattress.
want to mess up your illustration, but I'm just
that's a good picture to paint.
Yeah.
So now imagine that you have your mattress, coil springs in there. And then, you know, the shock's job is to control that speed, right?
Yeah.
So we'll get into your Corvette.
Yeah.
What do you remember? So you have a base. What is the factory spring rate?
Oh man, I have that. I have a list of that somewhere, but off the top of my head, the kind of the stock spring. Now the Corvettes have a leaf spring, or are you asking about the coilovers?
Well, you can touch on the leaf spring, but just basically generally the rate.
So the leaf springs on stockish cars, the fronts are in the 550 kind of range, and the rear is close to 700 pounds.
Yeah. So
on
more,
the spring rate.
More in the rear for the Corvette.
So and the car uses transverse leaf springs stock. So they're made out of fiberglass. Transverse means that they run across the car. Because I know leaf springs sound very ancient, and it is very old technology.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say like, oh, that's what old trucks run. But, you know, trucks run like they run horizontal with the truck.
Yes.
And they're like metal leaf springs. So it's the same concept, but, you know, completely different. But it runs across, and it's basically the brackets hold it to the subframes, rear and front. And so only the kind of the ends of the leaf spring are kind of flexing and doing that work.
Right.
But that's kind of where the rates are at. Now, the more base cars you get are on the softer side because at least like in the C6, right? The newer cars obviously don't use leaf springs, but it's at the time with the C5 and 6, the target audience, and this is important for cars because it depends. The manufacturer knows what is my target audience, and they will tune a car for the audience, right? So the Corvette, for example, is very capable, but if you make it too stiff and you know, okay, it's good for handling, but guess what? The old guy with the New Balance and the cargo shorts, he's not going to like it.
Right.
You know, that older guy. And then especially back then, their demographic was like 55 to 65-year-olds. Like retired guys go buy a Corvette and they drive it. So the cars were very soft. They were very comfortable and just enough to where like, okay, it handles nice, but they know this guy's not going to throw it around corners. Mm-hmm. And then with the Grand Sport Z06, they got stiffer. Yeah, so that was more like the Z06, C6 Z06 was like, okay, we're going to try to really build a capable track car here. Mm-hmm. So they did stiffen it up and bigger sway bars. Obviously, the big fat tires in the back, like 325s or whatever they came with.
Huge. Yeah.
So it was a much stiffer ride. Mm-hmm. And then they went into, I don't know if you want to touch on this later, but like magnetic ride control. Because so many modern cars have that now.
Yes.
Cadillac was one of the first to develop that. Mm-hmm. And they actually lent Ferrari that technology.
Wow.
But with the C6 ZR1, you saw that technology come into place. And I'm fortunate enough to know the engineer that developed the software for that.
Nice. Jim
Merrill, very cool guy. He's retired now from GM. But what he does is you can send him your computer, the body, I forget what it's called, but there's a computer on those cars that just controls the suspension, and he'll tune it. Modules. Yeah. He drove these cars on the Nürburgring.
Nice.
So he wanted a more aggressive setup, for handling and racing, and GM's like, no, tone it down. Right? Like, remember, New Balance cargo shorts, right? 60-year-olds. So if you want the more aggressive setting, you can send him the BCM, the computer. Oh. He'll tune it with those better settings.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Power technology, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of the setup on the Corvettes. Now, it's actually a very capable setup.
Yes.
They're actually very fast. GM has had decades to develop that. Since the 60s, they were using the transverse leaf spring setup. Mm-hmm. With the C4s, it really shined. They made really nice track cars. Mm-hmm. So they kind of kept that. And the C5 to C7 is very similar. Mm-hmm. They're just an evolution of each other.
Yes.
But when you look at the suspension, you're like, it's almost the same. Mm-hmm. Geometry has changed. They tweaked it, but overall, like, it's pretty much the same setup. Mm-hmm. So they're very capable cars. Yeah. It just stock.
Right.
But that's how I kind of learned to start tweaking using stock components.
Yes.
Yeah.
Touch on the strut or shock configuration of the Corvettes.
Yeah. So it's a double, we call it a double control arm setup, double wishbone setup. Mm-hmm. So the strut kind of just runs in the middle of the control arms. So it's a very efficient setup, a very light setup. Mm-hmm. Sachs, I believe, was one of the main manufacturers for GM.
Nice.
And they got pretty serious about it. The C5 Z06, they started to develop those shocks at the Nürburgring.
Oh.
Because Sachs is German, I believe. So they started to develop that suspension for those cars. So the C5 Z06 was like their first kind of real attempt at a track-worthy car.
Nice.
So, basic just gas strut setup. Mm-hmm. And, they developed it as far as they can go for, the next few generations of car. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very efficient, but they were limited because obviously they're not really tunable. Right. So they're kind of tuned for the stock car. Mm-hmm. Thing is, once you start changing things, you kind of start getting away from the what would you call it, the kind of the tuning the capabilities of that shock. If you start running bigger wheels, like, that's a lot more weight that the shock's seen. Yeah, the rates that it's seen,
more lateral grip.
Yeah, so I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but very efficient setup. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of aftermarket companies started to catch wind and join the development. And one of the big ones was Bilstein.
Yes, big one.
So one of the best upgrades while remaining stock is Bilstein for those cars. Mm-hmm. One company called Doug Rippey Motorsports developed their own Bilstein, which is kind of like the go-to standard if you're going to upgrade the shocks. But yeah, I mean, short of a coilover, which we'll get into later, you have some tuning capabilities with a stock shock or strut that does pretty well.
Yeah.
But the spring aspect kind of leaves a little bit to be desired, as good as it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Once you kind of start tracking or driving really hard.
Right.
But yeah.
It's interesting how, so you mentioned Bilsteins. My current 350Z that you got to see and we drove together with, that I kept the stock geometry as much as I could, but just kind of beef up everything around it. Spherical bushings all around, Swift springs, so just like a 1-inch drop, Bilstein shocks. And they account for a lowered car. So I actually purposely got the Bilstein shock to account for that.
Yeah, they make the shorter shock, right? Yeah.
Right. So at least it'll operate in that frequency and range.
Yeah.
The GR86 that come with, well, mine in particular, but any with the performance package have Sachs dampers.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting to hear. And I started reading into how long they've been around because I didn't know about Sachs until I got into my 86. And after have driven on it for such a period of time, 2 years already, and then 1,000 miles almost of track time in that car, I realized, oh yeah, these shocks actually do pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm actually really impressed. But it's working within the I should say the spectrum of how it was designed is very important, because then once you alter one thing, change the spring, drop the height, now you're operating outside of that frequency that it wasn't intended for. And just like you mentioned with the Corvette, well, then, if you want to beef it up even more, then you have this alternative shock, or you have this alternative route to take.
Yeah.
Let's touch on, so you mentioned gas shocks, right? And we'll dive deeper into it, but there are also, oil-based shocks.
Yes.
And we'll dive deeper into why that's more beneficial. And then obviously, finally, the magnetic ride. That's a whole other beast in itself.
Yeah.
But then with springs, there's different types, right? Because we have a linear spring, which is essentially the same rate throughout. Then we have progressive rates.
Right.
So with the Corvette, I want you to touch on, because the rear is leaf, and at some point they transition. When did they transition away from the leaf spring? And what was it that they finally noticed that was beneficial?
Well, that would be with the C8.
The C8's the final one. Okay.
So the C8, I haven't explored the C8 suspension too much, but obviously it's has more of a coilover setting.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, basically now you have an engine in the rear, so you don't have the space for that rear subframe and all that anymore, or a leaf spring running across the rear. Where the previous generations, transaxle setup, you have a lot of room back there, a ton. The only thing that you just route the exhaust over it, and that's it. So there's nothing in the way.
Nice.
So you had more room to play with, and that's why the leaf spring worked for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, now you have the C8, and you have the magnetic shock capabilities, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Just really quick, in case anyone's wondering how those work. So you mentioned some struts are filled with oil. So on those cars, the oil has iron particles in it, and the shock itself receives an electrical signal that changes the. I'm just trying to put this in layman's terms,
right, yeah.
But it'll change the orientation of the iron particles in it to make it either easier or harder for the strut to. There's like a valve inside that moves through that fluid, so either increases the resistance or removes it, and it's working with a bunch of different sensors. They kind of work like little height sensors, and so the car's always knowing what each wheel is doing. Like it'll know when you hit a bump, and it can increase or soften. Right, it sends the signal to the shocks, and I mean this works in milliseconds.
Yeah,
to just adjust the resistance of that shock.
Yeah.
So most stock shocks don't have that adjustability. It just has a set valve inside, kind of that's been tuned for whatever application it's in. You get into coilovers, now you have dials, which maybe we can touch on later, where you can adjust rebound or compression.
Yeah.
So that would be like the main thing. So most modern sports cars, especially high-end stuff, has all electronic suspension.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's interesting to see the evolution from like older cars when we first started driving.
Yeah.
You know, gas shocks, and at some point they transition to fluid.
Yeah.
And then we'll touch on the coilover setup, because some are monotube and then there's like dual shocks, and then
some have reservoirs
right?
And some don't. But yeah, and then it's you have to also understand that the more modern stuff, the whole magnetic ride it's a way of having the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. So it does kind of great. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Right. So it kind of, you're driving on the street, perfectly comfortable. You go on the track, okay, it'll handle some track duty. But if you, even like in the Corvette world, if you go look at the Sirius C8s that are being tracked, they don't have the electronic stuff. It all goes back to old school coilovers with, manual tuning setups.
All right. So even MagneRide has a limit, a capacity.
Yeah. Whether you reach it as a driver is different,
right?
But
it's a whole
it has its limits. Yeah.
I'll touch a bit on like my car, because you mentioned the Corvette, the stock spring rate. You have less rate in the front versus rear. My the 8.6 and BRZ cars are similar.
Yeah,
they have more rate in the rear versus the front. And I'll share a little bit from the driver's perspective what that really means. Because right now, we touched on like spring rates. Typical coilovers I've seen have more rate in the front versus rear.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean? What I've learned is that if you're approaching a turn and you're getting ready to set up, match the speed. You're slowing down, get to the right speed to approach the apex. Usually having more rate in the front and less in the rear stabilizes a car when you're off throttle.
Right.
So you have the confidence to dive into the turn. Once you're approaching the apex, you have the steering wheel turned the right amount. Then you do what's called maintenance throttle. Just get on the throttle just enough, just to maintain the speed. You're not accelerating, you're not decelerating. Then once you're clipping the apex, getting ready to accelerate and open up that wheel, then you can lean on the power.
Yeah.
The reason you don't want to get on power too early is because then you'll start to understeer. Because when you're approaching the turn braking, you're shifting that weight to the front.
Yeah.
Now, when you have more rate in the front, the car is more stable under braking. The moment you get off the brakes, you're setting that weight back to the rear.
Yeah.
Now, the rear is a little bit more plush. It allows for that articulation. But the moment you get on throttle, now you're throwing too much weight in the back. And it's not allowing the front end to steer, because now you're taking traction away from the front. Now, the cars that have, like our cars, more rate in the rear versus the front, you're going to feel a lot more dive when you brake. But the intention versus more rate in the front, you can late braking or brake harder, set the car up, wait, hit the apex, throttle out.
Yeah.
More rate in the rear actually encourages you to want to trail brake and brake lighter earlier. The reason for that, you're balancing the car, but now you're doing it with your foot.
Right.
So trail brake into the turn, and you can essentially, with enough driver's skill, set the car up with the brake. Once it's pointed the nose where you want it to go, you can immediately get on throttle earlier,
right?
Maintain the throttle, and then you can even roll on the power earlier, depending on, if it's a Corvette, you have a lot of power, you probably can't romp on it.
Yeah.
But my 8.6, you can get on it much sooner, underpowered, right? That's what I noticed with the spring rate difference, is that Toyota and then even GM at that time, they wanted to encourage you to balance the car while on throttle, because once you set the weight to the rear, there is more rate in the rear, automatically the car is balanced versus having more in the front. Yeah. So that's when I started to play around and realize, when I was playing with spring rates, that's why you have more rate in the front, or that's why this car has more rate in the rear.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to driver preference, because we'll just briefly get into racing. Every driver has a different preference, right?
Yeah.
Not every car is set up the same. Never. And then they obviously continuously change it from one track to the other. Obviously, we don't have that kind of budget.
Yeah.
But driving it on the street, we kind of want to, kind of like you mentioned, jack of all trades, but a master of none. You kind of want it well-rounded. We straight our cars.
Yeah.
We canyon it. We track it. So you want it well-balanced. But seeing that how the car is designed can get you to start to think, oh, this is how I'm supposed to drive it.
Right.
And then adapt your driving style to the car instead of immediately thinking, oh, this sucks, let me just throw coilovers on it.
Yeah, because on like the 86, what's the weight distribution on that one? Is it close to 50-50 or?
It's close.
Slightly front heavy?
It's slightly front heavy. I want to say like 50,
48?
yeah, 52, 53.
Okay.
Around there, maybe slightly more. But so a little bit more nose heavy, but considering that I've learned tracking the car that I trail brake everywhere. And it's very light.
Yeah.
I don't brake hard. Yeah. Unless it's a hairpin turn.
You know, it's funny because like you might look at a Corvette in 86 and think they're completely different cars, and they're very similar.
Right.
Like right now, my car has a weight balance of 52-48.
Nice.
So very similar, you know, front engine cars. Corvette's transaxle, but weight distribution is what matters, you know?
Yes.
So very, very similar cars, just a little smaller with the 86, you know? But yeah, the same thing is the rear. I would wonder, like, why is the rear like a little bit stiffer? And so like what they're thinking too is when you accelerate, the car stays kind of level.
Yes.
Because all that weight transfers to the rear and the car kind of stays flat.
Exactly.
You know, so you're not like, oh, you don't feel like the nose is lifting up. And then when you do brake or go into a corner, having the front a little softer gives you more initial bite. And so you have a little more grip. And like the Corvettes were known to be, you know, a little tail happy. So you kind of want, you don't want to understeer too much. So you kind of want that front end grip. And so kind of like that's how they played around with it. But I would think so too. Like, okay, like I have all this weight up front, like when I'm braking. Why is it softer? And yeah, that's one of the first things you start noticing, like when you're tracking the cars, like nosedive on corners, you know, braking zones going into corners and stuff like that. Right. So it's interesting, like, yeah, different cars, but same dynamics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coming from my 350Z, that has more rate in the front. So I realize I can dive deeper in the turn. I can get on the brakes really hard.
Yeah.
And then once I'm getting ready to set up for the turn, then it's just set it up and then light throttle.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different driving style, even from when I drove the Miata.
Yeah.
Prior to that on the track. But just interesting to see like why it was intended to have, you know, the certain spring rate. So now we'll get into the aftermarket a little bit. If you want to touch on, because linear springs versus progressive. I've haven't had progressive springs on any of my cars yet, but I started to drive different cars that had it, and then I started to make sense of it. Have you? Do any of your cars, or have you had any of your cars with linear springs?
Yes. Well, right now they are linear.
Oh, you on the car? That makes a lot more sense.
But I have driven a car with progressive. Again, that's more of a very nice street setup. That's track capable. Yeah. So if anyone's wondering, that just means that in layman's terms, as the spring compresses, it gets stiffer. So the rate changes. So if you're not, if you're not putting too much weight on that spring, you're kind of just driving normal. It still feels pretty comfortable. But then when you lean on it, it'll think of it as it's pushing back with more force to kind of keep the car level. So progressive springs are very nice because they do feel very balanced. So if and I'll get into like in my car in a little bit, but I do recommend usually progressive springs if you can for a dual duty car.
Yes.
So you're going to be on the street a lot, or you like canyon roads. They feel more forgiving, and it's just a bit more of a comfortable drive.
Right.
Linear spring rates, it's to me, it's more like a purposed car. Like I need this car to do this one thing really good. So I just need the shock and spring combo to just do its job, and like that's it. So I didn't even get into coilovers until I added aero onto the car and downforce. Nice. Because the setup I had before, which was custom valve Bilstein shocks. I had the springs were off of a Z06, which were stiff enough for my setup. And the shocks helped kind of tune out the wheel hop that the cars are kind of known for. You know, when you have high horsepower, a light car in the rear kind of likes to kind of hop around a little bit. They call it wheel hop.
Yeah.
Whether you're launching or it'll feel a little looser on corners. So the right valve dampening on the rear shocks kind of help control that.
Yes.
So the car felt very good. It felt very balanced. But I started to like really push that setup to the max. So I had that setup hitting like 1.6 G on corners. Wow. You know, with 200 treadwear tires. Yeah. Actually 100 treadwear at the time. It was the Nankang AR1s.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, this car I need a little more downforce, you know. And I started exploring things like the vents and stuff like that. And I added a auto crossed out spoiler, which helped keep the rear in check, you know. But it's very draggy. So I'm like, okay, let's just go all out. So that's when I put the wing, and I need to balance that with the front splitter. So now I'm adding, 600 to 800 pounds of downforce to this car.
It's two baby elephants.
Yeah, like the building, the shocks, like they were doing its job, but they weren't intended to see all the shock knows is this car weighs 600 pounds or more.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
And the spring, same thing. And so I found myself like rubbing the tires, you know, in the wheel well, and I'd hit a corner, I can smell the rubber. And I started raising the car to compensate for the suspensions, how much it was squatting or being compressed.
Right.
But that was the wrong fix. And I knew it, right? Because think about it this way. Let's say you're going 100 something miles an hour on a straight and you're coming into a corner, the car's compressed with downforce. Now you get into your braking zone. What does that suspension want to do? It just wants to push that car back up.
Yes.
And so now all your momentum stopping, all your weight's going forward. The rear springs just want to throw the back end up. And so all of a sudden the car, even though I have downforce, but when I'm coming into a braking zone, my rear is pretty loose.
Oh, that's scary.
You know, now the car wants to want to come around the corner. And I'm thinking, do I need to like soften my sway bar for more grip? And I'm like, no, I need to beef up the suspension. Yeah. So that's when I went to coilovers. And I went with Silver's Neomax. They make some nice coilovers for Corvettes. But the spring rates on them are specific for downforce, for handling downforce. And this time I went a little stiffer in the front.
What is your setup with that one?
Yeah, that one is, because I'm always looking at them. That one's 14K in the front, which comes out to like, what's that, almost 800 pounds.
Okay, yeah.
And then the rear is 12. Okay,
yeah.
So it's
big difference from stock, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't ride harsh. It's stiffer, but it's not like terrible.
Are those progressive or linear springs?
No, those are linear springs.
Linear as well. Okay.
Nice. By Silvers.
Okay.
But the next upgrade would be like Swift.
Okay.
So just in case people are familiar with names, like Swift is a big company that make a lot of really nice springs, linear and progressive. To be honest, I would probably stay linear because I'm used to how they feel.
Yeah, it's consistent.
Yeah. I am curious though to throw in some progressive springs just to see how I like them. Yeah. But I'm lazy. It's a lot of work to put them on and off. But
you might find yourself having to redial and retune the car again all over.
You know, that's the thing. Like with suspension is you're always dialing something in. Yeah. Even more so with aerodynamics, because if I add a little more downforce with the wing, that affects what the rear's doing. Yeah. You know, then I can tune it with the sway bar. You know, it's a lot of stuff. So
when you have variables constantly changing from one speed to the other, that's where you have to keep adapting yourself. And you're like, is it me or is it the car?
Yeah. You know, and like I was at Willow Springs and kind of dialing the car in, and it was pretty close to full stiff, not full stiff, but you know, it was up there, and it felt great, like tons of grip, flat around corners. And I can just get on the power, and you can just, and the car feels faster because you're putting the power down, you know? But then I hit a canyon road, and I'm like, okay, this thing's kind of tell-happy here. You know, like, I don't have as much grip as a racetrack. And then I learned, like, okay, you got to soften it up. The racetrack doesn't have all these undulations and dips and change in camber, on and off camber, you know, around corners.
And you're maximizing speed a lot more on the track too.
Yeah. You know, track's all about speed. Right.
The aero live and functions. Yeah.
On the canyon, you're trying not to die. So it's
exactly.
It's a different setup.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll touch a little bit about my experience with coilovers. I actually, for the longest time, I've never been a big fan of coilovers. I never really needed it. Yeah. But for me, I've always done like as stock as long as possible until I could change or had the need to. My first experience with coilover was on my fifth 240 SX that I have now. And the reason I did it was just because one, couple buddies of mine, we started a business, but long story short, had a dealer account. So I got stuff for cheap and I can get coilovers for like under $1,000. I was like, all right, great. I'll just throw it on. 8 kilogram front, 6 in the rear. Yeah. Everything else was stock. Now, mind you, this car had 230,000 miles. Everything is old. Put the coilover on. I'm like, oh, this feels great. And of course, I dump it like 3 inches because stock height was pretty high. Yeah. But it's pretty dumped. Like it's on the floor almost. And I'm like, I had to live my racer phase. And so I'm like scraping everywhere. I have to go sideways up driveways. But I realized, okay, so this is fine. Raise the height a little bit, get a more usability with it. When I started to change wheels, and I realized, oh, it's not fitting the same. So now I need more clearance. It wasn't until... because I daily that car for a long time. Once it didn't become a daily, I started to do a lot more to it. I basically overhauled the suspension, but complete bushing change. So I went with the energy suspension, urethane, everything. That car became so harsh for the street. Yeah. Because now, if you have, to give you an idea, you have stock suspension with 200,000 miles, almost everything, if there's any rubber left, it's very soft or it's gone. Once you stiffen the chassis with that high rate, everything became tense. Yeah. So now the weak link was the arms. So then I started to see arms beginning to fail. Yeah. But it was so stiff from the chassis side that it was spine shattering. I'm like, oh man, I don't like this. What am I doing? But that's when I realized when you change one thing, but everything else is, lack of a better word, not up to par. Then you start to upgrade things as you go. Everything changes drastically. And I realized that's how important it is to balance a car. Like you can't just change one component and expect it to be fantastic. At some point, other things need to catch up, or when they start to fall short, it's kind of like the weaker link of the chain. Yeah. So that's still where it's at, but I don't drive the car as much. But everything has been changed. All arms, all suspension, all bushings. There's nothing rubber left. But that is so focused on track. It feels great on a smooth road. The moment I take it to a canyon road with any articulation, it's terrible. I'm actually catching air because it's so stiff. Yeah. And a lot of accidents happen that way because guys, they throw in these suspension parts and the cars are too stiff. And, if you're mid-corner and you bounce or a wheel leaves the ground, that's it. Yes. Like you're not going to be able to regain control. And that happens a lot. When I see like someone on just cruising on the freeway, like in a Civic hatchback or something, and you just see them like bouncing, their head looks like a basketball. I'm like, dude, that guy's going to die the first corner he takes. But crazy enough, I've seen a Civic do that in front of me on the canyon. Yeah. Like he was stanced, really bouncy. The moment he hit a bump and there was a 90-degree turn, he actually flew past the turn and went into the dirt. It's like Mario Kart, like he hit a banana peel or something. But I'm like, man, he wasn't expecting that. Yeah. It's stiff might feel cool like when you're first driving it because like the first thing you notice is like steering input's crazy, right? Like you just turn the wheel and the whole car turns. Yeah. Yeah, on a nice flat road. But when you're doing that where each tire's doing something different, trying to maintain traction, that's a whole nother thing, And so, it takes a lot of experience to tune a car. Yeah. And even then, it takes a while, like different drives. I've made adjustments even depending on the tires.
You know that some tires are grippier than others, and you need to also dial the car in for that. So it's cool if you like doing that, right. But you have to be aware that like it's not just like one setting is good for everything.
Yes. When I started to experiment with front wheel drive cars, the first front wheel drive car I got was a 91 Sentra SER.
Nice.
And fun little car, you know.
Yeah.
It weighs nothing, underpowered, but still very short wheelbase like a Miata. Now it's just being pulled by the front tires.
Yeah.
I realized that, you know, I'm watching these best modding videos because they're my benchmark. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing these guys do like time attack at Tsukuba Circuit. And I'm looking at their suspension spring rates. And I'm like, why are they going so aggressive with the offset? Mm-hmm. And they're very different. Like some have very, very high spring rate in the rear.
Yeah.
And then some have maybe offset more rate in the front. But I'm like, well, they're understeery. But then what is that accomplishing? Then I realized, well, front wheel drive is kind of similar because one, if your wheels are pulling you around the corner, essentially to drive the car, you have to be on throttle all the time, mm-hmm. especially if a limited slip because it's pulling you around. Well, we all know that front wheel drive cars tend to have understeer tendencies.
Yeah.
So if it is going to understeer more likely, how can you combat that? Well, adding more rate in the rear, I realize it's forcing the stability from the rear to put more emphasis on the front.
Yeah.
But if you allow more compliance in the front, lesser rate, now the front tires can actually articulate more, find the grip that you need, and then stay on power longer. Yeah. Because the rear is allowing that to happen versus the rear being softer, you're going to understeer all the time.
Yeah, you want that rear on a front wheel drive car you want to be able to kind of, you know,
almost like rotate around you.
Yeah, you want to rotate it, be able to throw it around into the corner. Yeah. Because all that grip is on the front and your accelerator, you know, the power's being put down on the front. Mm-hmm. So, yes, guys, I've driven front wheel drive. I'm not Corvette only, but it's a whole different experience. I'm not Max Verstappen. I don't hate it completely, but it's a different experience. But yeah, it has its own different type of tuning. Yeah. You know, they kind of stiffen their rear up a bit and learn how to throw it a bit more around corners. Yeah. Yeah, much different than rear wheel drive, higher horsepower car. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting like when you start getting into it, seeing the differences in setups and tuning, you know, and how important it is to get it right.
Yeah. And you know, there's so many nuances with it, but we won't go too far into it. But obviously, when you start to increase rates and change like damper tunings, now you're changing the window of how much grip you can possibly have. Yeah. Then you have to consider your tires, and then now you're considering, in your case, you're considering aero. Yeah. There's so many other factors that play with it, right? But just know that it's like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Domino effect, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's especially with suspension, like everything affects everything else. Yes. You know, earlier you mentioned the bushings. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm actually a fan of stock rubber bushings. Mm.
I'm appreciating it now.
Yeah, you know the stiff bushings, whether you go Delrin or spherical bearings, like if you're more hardcore race car, awesome for handling. Yeah, and it actually helps the suspension work better because there's no deflection. Yes, you know, so like the shock when there's no deflection, it works better because it's almost working in a straight line. You know, there's nothing moving that valve body sideways, and so the rates it makes the car more predictable. But I mean, it's just teeth shattering, like you said. You know, it's just all the vibrations come through. Yeah. And the stiffer the car setup, like the more you're gonna feel it. So usually spherical bearings or even Delrin like kind of suck on the street. Especially here in SoCal with our streets, dude. Yeah. And you're like out in Long Beach, it's like a minefield, right? Trying to drive around like where the trucks destroy all the roads.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So I learned on the Corvettes to keep the rubber bushings on. And even recently, just because they were on sale, I got some new control arms on the car, the front top control arms. Even though mine were still okay, I'm just like, you know what, they're cheap enough. I'm gonna swap them out. just to have fresh rubber bushings. So I want a little bit of give.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned to do is I rather have a stiff enough spring rate that helps control the car, and the tunability comes from the shock.
Yeah.
So especially with a coilover that's tunable, that's where I control how the car feels.
Yes.
So that's just what I've learned. I know different cars are different, and even driving styles are different. Some people like cars set up differently. But in my case, I do my tuning with the shock.
Yeah.
And every car is different. So like on my car, I have the rear shocks are a little stiffer than the fronts because I want that front grip. I want the car to turn in where I want it to go. So, I mean, you drove it, feels pretty balanced. And even then I'm always playing with it.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the key. I like having a good balanced car that can do a little bit of everything. And then if I do go to the track, I can just turn up the shocks, stiffen them up, and the car feel better, and then dial them back down and drive home.
Yeah. Now it's interesting you mention that because so my current Sentra, my daily driver, I've been playing around with the damper settings because it has too much rate for the street.
Yeah.
And because the chassis is so rigid, I could feel all of it. So I had it under damped for a long time. I don't really like it because it does bounce.
Yeah.
So now I'm just like, you know what? Let me just suck it up and just match the rate for now. But ideally, long term, I do want to change the spring rate. And I know that you can adjust because it's 32-way adjustable. You're allowed like 2 kilograms below or above for the sake of the same shock bandwidth. So later on, I'm planning to do that. But for now, I'm trying to like just tune it. But even then, it depends on what you're using it for and what your application is. Let's talk about like maybe suspension, travel, and height.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people will dump the car like I did with my 240 a long time ago. And that doesn't necessarily mean lower center of gravity is always better. Not when there's a certain point you're outside of the operating range. Now, typically, compression stroke, you need it like several inches.
Yeah. Well, you're going to bring out the nerd in me.
Go for it.
And I know we don't have forever. But yeah, I mean, this is stuff you can talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's depending on the geometry of the vehicle. It depends how big is the wheel within the wheel well.
Yeah.
How much travel can you afford?
Right.
Inside. So that depends. A lot of people throw these big, cool looking wheels, and all of a sudden it's like, I have no travel left, especially if the car's lowered. So there's a lot of things to consider that we'd be here forever.
Yeah.
But you want enough travel where the suspension is doing its job.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't take a lot. Usually it's like 4 inches that the suspension's working most of the time, like on a stiffer sports car.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone's wondering, most aftermarket shocks or coilovers have compression and rebound. So compression, it just controls how fast, I like to say how fast it gets squished, right?
Yes.
So how fast can you squish down that spring? That controls that. Rebound is how fast it allows the spring to push it back up. So and it can be a little, even my mountain bike has like these settings. And it can be a little confusing because like on a mountain bike, for example, on one end of the dial, there's a turtle. And on the other, there's a rabbit. So which one's hard and which one's soft? Like, okay, so the rabbit obviously means fast, right? Yeah. So if you let it compress fast, that means that if you hit a bump, the car's going to just go down faster. So you don't want it to be too fast because it's easier to bottom out.
Yes.
So I'm not going to tell you what settings to put. This is stuff you got to play around with in your car, but just how it works. The rebound is how fast it comes up. So if you allow it to rebound back up too quickly, it'll feel really springy.
Yes.
Right. So it feels like you're riding on springs. Now you're getting bouncy. So you don't want to be too bouncy. So you want enough rebound to where it allows the suspension travel to kind of reset itself in a way before the next bump. And you kind of have to find, depending on where you're driving and how you're using the car, like that sweet spot.
Yes.
So I'm not a fan of cars with like, what did you say yours was 30 something, 36 way adjustable?
Like 32.
Yeah. You know what?
It's a lot.
Yeah. I figured out like, if you like turn the dial like 2 or 3 little notches, like you don't really feel a difference.
It's not drastic.
Yeah.
You have to go like 3 at a time to even,
and I'm like, who goes like 1 click at a time? Like you're not gonna feel that, like mine's 24. Mm-hmm. And even then it's like, okay, there's not like a huge difference here, like between 1 or 2. Maybe if you're like doing lap after lap, but there's so many variables you're not gonna feel it.
It has to be a very controlled setting.
Yeah,
so a lot of data.
And I'm just saying this because it's like don't be like, oh, this one must be better because it has a ton of settings. It's like, no, that's more stuff you have to like deal with. Yeah. Sometimes the less settings is better.
Yes.
24, 16, more than enough. Right. Yeah. So like mine is 24, and I think right now I have it set at like 16 or 18 clicks.
Nice.
Where it feels like stiff enough to where it's controlled, but it's compliant to where it's not harsh and you maintain grip around corners, handles bumps pretty well.
Yeah.
Which, Angeles Crest and GMR knows that they get pretty bumpy. Mm-hmm. So that's where I dial in the car.
Yeah.
People slam their cars and now your suspension can't work.
Yeah.
Because you compressed that shock already. Mm-hmm. So before maybe that shock was able to travel 6 inches, you just lowered your car 3. Now it has 3 inches of travel. Mm-hmm. So if you hit a bump or something that's going to move that wheel more than 3 inches, it's going to bottom out to suspension. And when it bottoms out, it hits hard and then it just lifts up the chassis because there's no suspension there anymore. So
it catapults you up, and that's scary.
So earlier, one thing you mentioned was that they do sell shorter shocks if you are going to lower a car. Bilstein is big on that. In the one popular Corvette shock or 2 of them is a B8 and B6.
Yep.
And people are like, "Oh, what's the difference?" Because one says heavy duty and one says that. Well, the only difference really is that one, I think, is like an inch shorter or something like that.
Yes.
So that one's for lowered cars. I forget if it's the B6. That one's called Sport. And then the other one's called heavy duty.
Yeah.
So the heavy duty one has a little more gas pressure just to help it feel a little stiffer so it's not too soft. The sport one is also stiffer, but it's shorter so you can lower the car.
Yeah.
Without messing with the geometry too much.
Yeah.
And a quick side point, anytime you lower or raise a car, you need to realign it.
Yes. That's a great point.
And people don't think about that. Yeah. They're like, oh, I lowered the car, now it's eating up the tires. Or it usually always changes the toe the most.
Toe and camber. Yeah.
Camber a little bit is just depending on the setup, but for sure toe. Yes. And that's what eats up tires the quickest. So lower your car. If you are going to lower it, I always say like drive it for like 50 miles, let everything kind of really settle in and then get it realigned.
Yeah.
So you're not chewing up tires. But yeah, you don't want to slam a car so low that the suspension isn't working. And I know they look cool sometimes.
Yeah.
And manufacturers many times do leave the cars pretty high because they want as much suspension travel as possible. Because they don't know what people are going to encounter.
Yeah.
So they need to set up the car to see a little bit of everything.
Yes.
So usually you can get away with 0.5 inch to 1 inch lowering a car with the stock suspension components. Not, you can get away with it. But once you start getting below, lower than that, you might want to start looking at aftermarket parts.
Yeah. Because
now your control arms are they're out of the geometry spec. Your sway bars, you might want to look at adjustable end links. So yeah, it affects all of that stuff.
Domino effect.
Yeah. Especially if you're going to do any type of performance driving.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've even learned, just to touch on that, is the Sentra, it can't take too much of a lowering.
Yeah.
Before the lower control arms sit up.
Yeah.
And for those you're wondering, if you look under a car, typically, or if it's raised, your lower arms droop, right?
Yeah.
once it sits and it's static, it starts to raise up a little bit, but usually it sits lower than the rest of the chassis, pointed down. If you're looking at from where it connects to the chassis inside, looking out to where it touches the wheels, it's usually pointed down where the wheels are or the hub.
Yeah.
I have driven cars that had been lowered past the point to where the hubs are now sitting higher than where where it connects to the chassis.
Yeah.
And then that drives very goofy. And it's very unsafe and
you see the axles all pointed all weird
and they're pointed up. It
yeah.
puts so much stress and load. So
yeah, all the joints. It
doesn't like it.
Yeah, it hates that.
There are some cars that can handle. Like there are Civics that can take like a 4-inch drop, and their arms are still, if anything, even, but still have more room to go. But then there are cars like the Sentra that can't take it. So it's but again, like, why are you going that low? You just have to kind of figure out what is your purpose behind it.
Yeah. I mean, many times it's for looks.
Yes.
Or people are just starting out and you think, lower car, you have a lower center of gravity. And yes, it is going to handle better, but when the geometry is correct.
Yes.
Because then you start getting into bump steer, and this is stuff people can look up. We can't be here forever, but as suspension travels up and down, it's changing the camber of the wheel changes, as the suspension moves. And as you're steering, that's changing too.
Yes.
So, you start getting bump steer and it just starts unsettling the car. And another thing to consider too is rake, which is the height difference front to back.
Yes.
And one thing that bugs me, dude, and I see it so much with Corvettes, is when the rear is lower than the front. Because sometimes the rear has a little more adjustability, and either the rear is slightly lower, or if the car's flat, like level, I'm like, you don't want that. You want the rear to always be slightly higher.
Yeah. Because
when you accelerate, you want the car to be flat.
Yeah, because it squats a little, then it's even.
Yeah. So what will happen is if you accelerate and your rear's lower, or if you're starting off level, then your front end comes up. Now you're catching all that air under the front of the car. And the faster you go, that air builds up. Yeah. And so Corvettes already have a front end lift issue. The stock aerodynamics, the cars build up a lot of air under the front of the nose, and they get very light at high speeds, triple speed. So if your rake is off, it just makes that much worse. Yeah. And most stock cars have a little bit of rake because the aerodynamics of the car. They're when you look at a Corvette, it's kind of wedge shaped to where the rears, they're kind of hippie, and the rear kind of comes up more. Yeah. Well, that's so that at speed, the air going over the car is pushing on the rear more. So if the car's already too low in the rear, like, it just makes that situation worse. Yeah. It's okay. Now it's turning into a rant because this is my pet peeve when I look at those cars. But
no, that's fair.
Yeah. Look up the right rake and don't slam your car.
Yes. Now, Nate, thank you for sharing all of that. And hopefully for you guys listening, got a basic understanding if just spring rates, and then you have dampers, and then the just understanding the basic concept of that. But then once you start to change things, you're tweaking the geometry, you're changing the travel of the suspension. Yeah. You're changing the geometry of it and the dynamic. Things do not always have a positive impact. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm always a fan of just drive your car stock and learn it. Yeah. Before you start tweaking.
We were talking so much technical stuff that I think the original message, like that you and I were going over, was don't feel the need to rush right into suspension modifications. Yes. I'm a fan of driving. Okay, you don't have track tires. Go drive it anyway. Go do a track day, just for fun. See how the car behaves. The first handling mods that I would do is tires. Yeah. Tires, and have some good pads. Make sure your fluids are good to go handle a track day, and then you learn the dynamics of the car. Yeah. Because there's a lot of factors. How old is the car? How modern is it? What's this? Some cars are tuned better than others. Yes. Maybe you're driving a sports car that's already has a nice package versus someone tracking a sedan, 30-year-old sedan. So, yeah. But don't feel the rush to like, oh, I need coilovers now.
Yeah.
Or I need this now. Like drive the car and then see how it feels. Like, okay, you know what? The car feels good. Maybe it has a lot of body roll. So maybe look at sway bars first or whatever. You know, each car is a little different, but explore your limits as a driver.
Yeah.
And so once you feel like, okay, I'm not getting faster, like this is my lap times now, and like I'm not getting quicker. Now, what dynamic of the car can I improve to go faster? But you're developing yourself as a driver first. And I know you do a lot of 86 stuff, and you know you have a lot of people that drive those cars. They're so capable stock.
Yeah. Like
you don't really need a bunch of stuff for them. Like put some decent tires, and trust me, like it'll take you a while to be like, I maxed out the car as a driver.
Yeah.
If you ever get there. Right. You know, like do that first, and you'll save money. You'll save headaches too, because like, you know, you don't have to worry about, you can just go drive the car.
Right.
I'm not like tuning it or nothing. And then later, as you get faster, like, okay, let's look at what mods are out there. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Now, Nate, if there's any one thing, I know you said a lot, but that was a pretty good recap. If there's any one thing that you can leave a message with the audience, what would that be? From today's topic.
That the best mod you can ever do is seat time. And don't feel rushed by what others are doing, how fast others are, or other skill set. Work on your own. If you're the fastest guy, the slowest guy in your group, don't worry about it. Like if you're having fun first and foremost, and you're improving as a driver, that's all that matters. So sometimes we feel a lot of pressure. We want to be as fast as our friends, or we're like, oh, this other guy drives the same car as me and he's this much faster. Like at the end of the day, no one cares. You're not competing for a paycheck. Like just go out and have fun and work on yourself as a driver. Like think about what skills can I improve on? You know, like what can I do better? Because that's going to translate to any car that you drive in the future. So seat time without worrying what anybody's doing.
100%. I love that. That was a great message. Yeah. To add to that, I think I align with that. Nice. I mimic that. And, you know, we've spent so many years behind the seat of a car.
Yeah, man.
We figured it out driving different cars. And I think that's really the best value for anyone that's listening. Sure, there's a lot of technical stuff you can learn, but at the end of the day, go drive different cars. Yeah. Go experience different setups, because that will give you understanding of what cars are capable of. Now, standard, of course, not stock. But in the last 10 years, stock cars have been so capable. Just go drive them.
Yeah. Don't rush to learn everything.
Yeah.
Worry about your car and yourself. Learn that platform and then keep going.
Yes.
You know, some of us are nerds and we want to know a little bit of everything, but like you said, it takes time. You know, I've been wrenching on cars, almost 30 years or whatever. Like that takes a lot of time. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. So just don't rush. Enjoy the process.
100%.
Enjoy the journey.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nate. As you guys know, he's on Rice and Beans, but just share your handle real quick so they can find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram, Nate, Nayt 83. Or you can also follow me at official SoCal Canyon Carvers.
Beautiful. Shift to Perspective is produced by Sociology of Everything, supported by Marina Cafe in Wilmington Shores, California. I'm your host, Shift. Please feel free to reach out to me on social media, found in the description, or email me at shift@sociologyofeverything. Together, we shift perspective, expand possibilities, and become insiders. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.